Culture trumps everything. Culture trumps everything means that culture has the ability to change not only our psychology, the way we think and behave, but also our biology, the way that we live. A lot of people believe that culture is this amorphous thing. It's difficult to codify and define. Culture's actually been very well studied in both psychology and other disciplines. This is the definition of culture. Culture is the context in which we live and work, including our beliefs, behavioral rules, traditions, and rituals. These are the components of culture. Beliefs are nothing more than the way we see the world. And when you change the way you see the world you see changes. This is a poster, recruiting poster, that was used in both World War I and World War II. This poster motivated children as young as 17, 16, and 15 years old to lie about their age so they can go fight in those wars. Do you think that poster would work today? There's been a shift in the beliefs in our culture, and particularly certain subcultures, regarding trust and our government. Let me just say that's the only statement I'm going to make about government today. The point here is that our beliefs are informed by our culture. Behavioral rules are the rules that govern our behavior. In the United States, when we greet people, we shake hands. In Spain, in France, you kiss on both cheeks. In Japan, you bow. Behavioral rules are rules that govern our behavior, and they are influenced by our culture. Traditions and rituals are simply things we do repeatedly, whether that is family gatherings, such as Thanksgiving, communions, bar and bat mitzvahs, graduation ceremonies. These are all examples of traditions and rituals informed by our culture. So when you think about differences between the East Coast and the West Coast, the two coasts and the Midwest, the United States and Asia, Asia and Europe, Europe and the Middle East, we're all talking about culture differences because the context in which we live and work is the culture or the subculture we inhabit. With that definition, there are two major drivers of human behavior. One is psychology, the other is biology. Culture trumps both. Culture trumps psychology means that personality is a tendency to behave in a particular way. Personality is a tendency because human behavior does not occur in a vacuum, it occurs in a context. And when you change the context of human behavior, behavior follows. We know this intuitively. If you take someone who's very loud and very boisterous and always talking at the top of their lungs, and you walk that person into a museum, a bank, or a church, what are they likely to do? They're going to get quiet. Have you changed their personality? Of course not. You've changed their context. And when you change the context of human behavior, behavior follows. Think about your own experiences. Do you behave differently at a rock concert than you do in a board meeting? Do you behave differently in a business meeting than you do in a sporting arena? If you have children and they are running through the house yelling at the top of their lungs, do you say things like, use your inside voice? These are all examples of how culture trumps psychology because culture trumps everything. Culture also trumps biology. We know from research dating back to 1990 that humans, monkeys, dogs, horses, all sorts of mammals have mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are the neurons that allow us to experience what other people experience. So if you can sense and detect somebody else's happiness, sadness, joy, frustration, and duress, it's because of mirror neurons. Think about the last time you were around a depressed person. How did you feel when you were around a depressed person? Tired, exhausted, drained, depressed, right? That's a mirror neuron response. Have you ever been around someone who's excited and energized, and all of a sudden you feel excited and energized? That's a mirror neuron response. Have you ever cried at a movie? Have you ever been scared at a movie? These are all mirror neuron responses. This is how mirror neurons work. They are biological, they are baked into our humanity, and they are beyond borders. How do we know that? Because we're born with them. If you take 20 babies in a maternity unit, if one of those babies starts to cry, what happens to the other 19? They start to cry, that's right. It's called empathetic distress. Do you think they cry any differently if they're white, black, Asian, Latino, First Peoples, or from any other ethnic group? The answer is no. Do you think they cry any differently if they're boys or girls? The answer is no. They all cry the same, regardless of race, ethnicity, skin color, nationality. They all cry the same because this is how mirror neurons work. They are biological, they are baked into our humanity, and they are beyond borders. What creates the differences in emotional expression in every single baby born as they age into adulthood? The answer is our culture. It is our culture that tends to make women more empathetic than men. That is a culture difference, not a biological difference, and just one example of how culture trumps biology because culture trumps everything. And it is precisely because of mirror neurons that they help define our primary human needs. Our primary human needs are to connect and belong. Connect means to build relationships with. Belong means to belong to something larger than ourselves. These are primary human needs. These are social needs. These are empathetic needs. Our primary human needs are social and empathetic. Well, Gustavo, if that's true, what about hostility, destructiveness, and violence? Why do they seem so prevalent all over the world? Hostility, destructiveness, and violence are a result of a disconnect from our primary human needs. Hostility, destructiveness, and violence arise as a result of primary human needs being stifled. So what? So what, Gustavo? What if all of this is true? Why is this an idea worth spreading? How can we use this to move beyond borders? When we understand that culture trumps everything, and we understand that primary human needs are to connect and belong, then we can begin to build cultures with institutions that reflect these realities. In the institution of business and industry, there is this belief that when things start to go poorly, we need to look at individual performers first and culture last. I can't tell you the number of times I've gone into an organization where some executive will say to me, Joe's just a B player, don't worry about Joe. Yet you change the context and the culture for Joe by putting him with a different team, and he becomes an A player. Or a supervisor who will say to me, Jane doesn't have the head for that, don't waste your time with Jane. Yet you change the context and the culture for Jane by putting her with a different supervisor, and she becomes a top performer. In the institutions of business and industry, there's this belief that when things go south, we look at individual performers first and culture last. What I'm saying is we must put culture first. Our people, our organizations, our institutions will all benefit by putting culture first because culture trumps everything. Let's look at these concepts applied more broadly to our society. The Centers for Disease Control tell us that children can be recruited into gangs as early as 10 to 12 years old. If these children are raised in any form of traditional way, traditional culture, they're taught, be kind, be considerate, say please and thank you, do not be hostile, destructive, and violent. And these children will give up everything they've ever known in order to connect and belong. Children join gangs to form connection and feel belonging they don't feel outside of the gang. Everyone outside the gang becomes the other, the necessary disconnect to behave in ways that are hostile, destructive, and violent. Gang violence is a result of primary human needs being stifled. Let's look at this historically over time, because the arc of human history bends towards greater connection and belonging. Thousands of years ago, human beings were hunter-gatherers. During those times, connection extended to family, kin, and tribe. People on the other side of that mountain, or even on the other side of this forest, they were the other. Since those times, we have had revolutions in agriculture, philosophy, and science. And with every revolution, human beings have extended and made more broad our ability to connect and belong. Religion took connection from family, kin, and tribe so that Christians could connect to Christians, Jews to Jews, Muslims to Muslims. We then had an industrial revolution, which created connections within a city-state. Brits connected to Brits, French to French, Americans to Americans. Today, we are living through an information and technology revolution unlike humanity has ever seen. And you need look no further than today's millennials, who see themselves as global citizens, who refuse to use race, ethnicity, skin color, nationality, language to separate and segregate the way previous generations have for decades. The only thing that's important to this generation is the desire to connect. And social media is the technology that fulfills their primary human drive to connect and belong without limits, beyond borders. The arc of human history bends towards greater connection and belonging. There's a saying in Eastern philosophy I like a great deal. It translates to this: there are three things that cannot long be hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Here are just some of the truths that inform my views about culture. This picture is called Pale Blue Dot. It was taken by the Voyager 1. The Voyager 1 was a spacecraft launched on September 5th, 1977, with two primary missions. First, to take pictures of Jupiter and its moons, which it had completed by 1979. Then, to take pictures of Saturn and its moons, which it had completed by 1980. Having completed those primary missions, NASA sent this vehicle hurtling to the edge of the solar system, which it reached 10 years later. February 14th, 1990. NASA ordered this vehicle to turn its cameras back towards the Earth to take one final picture of the Earth from 3.7 billion miles away. This is what it captured. Can you see it? That's it. That's here. That's what we call Earth. 2 pixels from 3.7 billion miles away. The world is a very small place, and what, as far as we know, is a vast and endless universe. Shouldn't that require us to be a little bit more humble? There is so much we do not know, and much we know for certain. We know that in the last 200,000 years that modern humans have walked the Earth, there have been about 108 billion people that have lived. All of them, including all 7.5 billion alive today, we are all more than 99.9% genetically the same, which means we're all connected biologically. We know that because of mirror neurons, which we are all born with and are baked into our humanity. We have the capacity to experience other people's happiness, sadness, joy, frustration, and duress, which means we're all connected psychologically. With all the information that's available to humanity today, the only place that can sustain any life, that, as we know it, are those 2 pixels from 3.7 billion miles away, which means we're all connected astronomically. Moving beyond borders means using these truths to build a culture that believes we must set aside that which divides us for that which unites us. With behavioral rules that say when we harm another, we harm ourselves and each other. With traditions and rituals that communicate the Earth is not a place we inherit from our parents and our ancestors. It is a place we are stewards of for our children and their descendants. I have an unshakable conviction that it is thought leaders, business leaders, community leaders, people who come to TEDx conferences and watch TED videos. We will play a vital role not only in the future of our culture, but in the future of humanity and of the planet. Why? Because we are all members of the cultures and the subcultures we inhabit and part of the same human tribe. We are responsible for shaping and creating our culture. It is up to us, you and me, to reach out to connect with people that do not look like us, sound like us, think like us, live like us. It is up to us, you and me, not just to tolerate, but to embrace our differences, because it is in the act of understanding and embracing our differences that we weave them into the fabric of a human experience so our culture and society move forward. It is up to us, you and me, to behave in ways that communicate. We are all one humanity. There is no other. There is no us versus them. There is only us. If we build a culture based on these fundamental truths, we will not only build a better culture, we will build a better planet, because culture trumps everything. Thank you for the privilege of your time and attention. Thank you very much. Thank you.